therapist for 25 years. I reached out to her when we started a business group together because Breanna, are you certified in structural integration too? Is that, no.
No,
Okay.
several different modalities within massage, but not structural integration
Okay.
specifically. Yeah.
But you kind of like dabble in that even without being like certified. Yeah. So I reached out to Breanna because she, has a view on the body like I do, where everything works as a unit and the area of pain is not normally the cause of pain.
No.
Exactly. Yeah. And so we've been chatting for a while, and she's super passionate about helping people relieve stress in their everyday life. And this week has been Stress Week here in my group. Yeah, Stress Week. And to end it like this. And we've been talking a lot about, changing your posture can change, kind of trick your brain into feeling less stressed and feeling a little bit more confident, right? But I wanted to bring Breanna on to give us a little bit more of a stress relief kind of tactics and tools instead of just retraining your posture. Let's go at it from the other side of how can we reduce stress, with our mindset and with our breath and all of that. So thank you, Breanna, for coming on and sticking with us with the technical difficulties. Super fun. So to start with, I just gave you a little bit of intro, but can you tell us a little bit why you got into this work and why specifically you were interested in helping people relieve their stress? Why did you go more that route instead of just helping people with tension? You really are passionate about helping people with stress relief.
Yeah, and it's interesting what you said about how changing your posture can kind of change how you think and feel, because that's such a powerful piece. And I was going to talk about that a little bit today, but I will tell you sort of my own journey in a nutshell. So I've spent 25-ish, it's probably a few years less. I don't know. I've lost track. I spent a lot of years working with people's bodies and primarily focusing on musculature and getting people more mobile and decreasing pain based on what's going on with their muscles. And during that time, I just was observing over and over again that stress was a big component of that, but we weren't really addressing that. People were coming in for physical pain, and that's what I kind of was specializing in. But I always saw it there as an underlying factor. I just never really realized how big of a component it was.
Yeah.
So that's sort of on the professional side. And then personally, I think what really sort of kicked this into high gear for me is I got divorced. And that was probably the most stressful time of my entire life. So I hope this isn't TMI for everybody, but I have never experienced stress like that before, and I had never had personal experience with what I would now say I had anxiety. I had never experienced that before, and how completely consuming and leveling that can be. It just feels so out of your control to do anything in those moments, and I just had never had that before. And it was during that time that I also, several years into that process, sort of reconnected with yoga and actually got certified to teach yoga. I'd always been interested in it and had it off and on in my life as a personal practice, but I decided that I wanted to actually teach yoga. And through that process, that is what the process of having anxiety for the first time in my life, and then going through a yoga training where we focused a lot on mindset and perspective and all of these things. And it really helped me to shift my relationship with stress, that practice of yoga. And that's when I got really passionate about it. So it was like my professional experience combined with my own personal experience sort of propelled me forward into really wanting to help people with this.
Yeah. That's what I find is very different from what I do versus yoga. So what I do is the Egoscue technique and it's very muscle driven. It's very like retrain your muscles. It's kind of, it's not as spiritual and mindset based as yoga. And that's kind of how I specify the differences. And I think different strokes for different folks, you know. I practice yoga sometimes too. And it's definitely more for that like breathing side of it and the stress relief side of it. And then I do the posture therapy stuff more for the structural side of it. And I think that's a little bit what people don't really understand about the differences. You know, yoga is so much of that that mindset aspect to it too. And a lot of people are sent to yoga to, you know, they get they're just told, oh, you have back pain, go to yoga, right? And I think we have to, you know, talk about what it is that we're getting out of yoga versus like structural training, you know, it's slightly, and they both have amazing benefits.
Yeah. Yes. They're all a part of a larger picture, and you need all of these different aspects. What I see, and this is probably a whole other topic of conversation that I could spend.
We could go on forever and ever. I knew that.
What I will say is that you know, we approach most things, I feel like, in this culture with that no pain, no gain mentality. We have a lot of cultural stuff going on. Yeah. And yoga, because it's in the fitness, it falls in that fitness realm. Kind of gets approached like a workout. So much more depth to it than that. So
exactly. I think there's a difference between how yoga was created and how yoga has turned into, especially you know, in the past 20 years with the yoga and the fitness yoga. Exactly. All right. Because
there's a lot of science behind it, and that's the other thing that's really cool and I'm kind of nerdy in that way. Like, I like that part of it, and so it's really cool to be in this place and time where I feel like the science and then the spirituality and the tradition is kind of all coming together, and you're like, wow, it's like it all makes sense. It's like they knew hundreds of years ago.
Exactly. Yeah, for sure. Okay, so we could nerd out about that for a long time, but let's stick a little bit more with the stress, because I know me and I know you to an extent, and we could like go off in different areas. So what later on you're going to lead us in kind of like a breathing technique, but what are some of the top tips for people, like say they're having a really, really stressful day, and just to kind of help be more aware and be more mindful in those moments? What are your suggestions for people to do in those moments? Does that make sense?
So, it absolutely does. And it's, so I spent my morning writing down a bunch of stuff about what I wanted to focus on and what I wanted to share. And there are really 3 areas that I think you have to start the conversation with before you even get into like, what can I physically do for myself? Because I feel like how we frame the conversation has a tremendous impact on what the outcome is for the techniques that we use.
Yeah.
So the first one is that there is a narrative, like I feel like you have to understand, or it'd be great for you to understand, that there's kind of an old narrative around stress that says that the whole goal around talking about whatever, navigating stress, is to get rid of it, right? Like eliminate stress. Stress, and you'll hear terms like stress reduction, stress management. I don't know about you, but when I hear stress management, it stresses me out, because you're telling me I have to manage one more thing in my life, and I'm already stressed out.
Yeah. And then normally you go into that perfectionist, like I have to do it right. I have to, get rid of all of the stress. And
So I think like what I would really encourage someone to do is start by recognizing that stress is something that is happening outside of you. You are responding to things that are happening outside of you, but that's not stress. Stressors are outside of you typically. I mean, we could go into minutiae here, but we don't need to do that. So if stressors are outside of you, how much control do you have over that? Like if you were to type in the comments right now, my stressors are, I bet it would be things like my kids, my job, things like
Well,
that,
yeah,
right?
the other day I asked people, I was like, what are your biggest stress?
Technology.
And a lot of them are things like traffic, lines, other people, I mean,
Yeah.
I get pissed off with, the people
So
walking slow at the grocery store.
correct.
So
Yeah, yeah.
exactly. It's a lot outside of us.
Right. And yes, we have, and again, whole nother conversation. Yes, we can make choices around some things that we let into our life and blah, 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 blah.
Mm-hmm.
But on a base level, stressors are happening outside of you, and you really have very little control over what is going to take place around you on a day-to-day basis, right? So if you can sort of take comfort in that and recognize that, like, stress is out here and what's happening here is my physical response to it.
And you can control that.
Right. Well, and you can work with that. You can
Yeah,
change
exactly.
it. You can do
Yeah.
something for it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, like, first off, establish that separation between, like, I'm not getting rid of any of this unless you're going to climb into a hole and sensory deprivate and never interact with the world. You're not getting rid of all that. So just
Which
sort of
some
like,
days I do feel like I want to do
yeah,
that.
yeah,
Throw the covers up over my
correct.
head.
Which,
Like, I'm
hey,
out.
that's a stress reduction technique.
Yeah, exactly.
But, so just like take comfort in that and
Mm-hmm.
recognize that separation between what's going on outside of you and then seeing what's happening with you as your response, right? So I think that's the first thing, because
Yeah.
the other thing I would say as kind of a piece of that is stress is not necessarily good or bad. And I think you posted an article about that.
Yeah.
You know, our body, I was thinking about that. I was like, okay, how do I explain this? I think about when I got married, the day that I got married, right? And I think about what I was physically feeling at that time. I was shaky, my
Mm-hmm.
stomach was tight, like I had nerves, but I
Yep.
was very happy, like that was joyful,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
And then I can fast forward however many years to the moment I decided to get a divorce. Same physical feelings.
Yeah, exactly.
Your stress is all kinds of things can cause your body to react in that way. They're not good or bad necessarily. It's just how our body responds to external stimulation and things that are happening, right?
Yeah, you go into the fight or flight kind of mode, right?
Yeah.
But your body doesn't determine whether that is good or bad. It is
Nope.
what it is. It's going into it's a reaction to
Mm-hmm.
like that video talked about a reaction to stimulus.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it doesn't recognize whether it's good or bad.
Nope.
Right?
That's a decision that we make
Exactly. Yeah.
based on all kinds of things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Sure.
So, and for me, I find a lot of comfort when I know the mechanics of something, when I really understand, because it takes the burden a little bit off of me as a human. And I like to put a lot of things on my shoulders. So,
well, and it
like, I like to think I'm
know
responsible for a lot of things.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah. Most people do, especially
yeah.
like women too. But
Yeah.
it helps to know the why, because when you understand things, now you can kind of control it better and you can make educated decisions on things. And
Yeah,
I'm a
absolutely.
big advocate of that with your body. It's helpful to know why you have pain, right?
Yeah,
Because everybody's always
absolutely.
like, I don't know. And to know that kind of why, and for me, it always ties back to your posture and your
Mm-hmm.
movement patterns and stuff.
Yeah.
That's the why. And as soon as you know that, then you
Yeah.
have more control on what you can do about it. You can make an educated choice to sit on the couch all day, but then you probably will feel pain tomorrow, right? But that's your educated choice. And sometimes that is what needs to happen. Like you said, with pulling the covers over your head, sometimes you just need a day to lay in bed and watch Netflix. But I think it's important to know the why, like you said. And so then the next day you're not sitting there guessing, okay, why is my back so tight? And what do I need to do about it?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And then, and that absolutely. And I feel like that totally sort of, if you don't mind me like adding another piece here, that totally kind of leads to the second thing that I was thinking about, which is, okay, so if I'm going to stop focusing so much on trying to control what's going on outside of me or eliminate it or whatever, then what the heck do I do? What the heck do I do? Especially when, because I feel like very high levels of stress. And then when you get into the zone where you're talking about anxiety, those things do truly feel out of your control.
Exactly.
And I feel it's important for people to know that it's not because you're doing anything wrong.
Yeah.
Your body is responding to external stimulation. And so then you're probably thinking, okay, well, like, then I need to control my response. And yes, we're going to talk about that in a minute, like choices in a minute. But what I want you to understand is that your body is actually doing what it was hardwired to do. Your body is intended to respond to stressful things in that way. It is a survival mechanism. It's what you were built for.
Yeah.
And then we're all now living in this world where we're saturated in stressors, literally in a culture where everything we do, from like scrolling on our screens to the blue light coming at us to constant stimulation.
Yeah.
So you're hardwired to respond in this way, and then you're dropped into an environment where everything around you is intended to trigger that response.
Yeah.
Like, it's not your fault.
No wonder.
It's not that you don't have to take responsibility for your choices.
Yeah.
Like, it's none of that, but it's literally like,
give yourself a break.
It's really like your body is doing what it's made to do. I just want people to really understand that.
Yeah, exactly. Well, same thing, and I'm always tying it back to the postural piece because that's what I do. But same thing with pain is your body is meant to move constantly. We don't grow up in an environment, even if you're active right now, we don't grow up in an environment that is as active as our like DNA is hardwired to be. Right. And so your body is responding by adapting, but eventually that's to pain. And so it's not your fault, right? Your body is doing the best it can for the stimulus that it has right now. It's adaptable, but then it leads to issues,
well,
it's not your fault.
And it's and I love the words adapting. I love the words reacting and responding, because I feel like all of those are really important in the conversation. That's the other thing your body does, whether it's with posture or pain or non-physical stressors, arguments, things like that. If you're not consciously driving the boat, steering the steering wheel, your body's just going to start doing stuff.
Yeah.
It's gonna take care of you. It's gonna do what it knows how to do, and it's gonna do it on a very primitive. It's not very high functioning. It's just gonna start throwing stuff at the problem, and then it's gonna throw more stuff on top of that. And before you know it, the actual problem is buried under all these layers of reactions and adaptations.
And your body's exhausted.
And that's why you feel like you can't get out of it, because you're in this mode where you're reacting, because your body has taken over for you. It's trying to keep you safe. It's trying to do what it knows how to do. And that's why it feels, I think, out of your control at that point.
I love it. Exactly. Do you have a third thing?
So I think that the third thing is really like, if you can understand those two things, right? That you're hardwired for stress, that you're living in a world that's kind of meant to trigger you. It's really like, what is the solution? The solution is, I think, is really about expanding how tolerant you can be. And we talked about this the other day, right? So when you're in high stress mode, your tolerance level starts to go like this. And again, that's a survival mechanism. That's what your body's supposed to do. It's trying to get you hyper focused so that you will not die. Right? It's the same with pain. Like when you're in a lot of pain and then you're in a lot of pain for a long time, like you get like this because you're like, I don't want anything to come in here and cause more pain. Right. So I'm just gonna like
you limit yourself.
Make that window really small.
I talk about that all the time with limiting activities. You know, this is just an example I use where, you know, if running starts hurting, you limit yourself to walking, and then walking starts hurting, you limit yourself to biking. And biking starts hurting, you limit yourself to sitting on the couch or whatever. And so you're consistently making your movement world, your activity world smaller and smaller and smaller, instead of figuring out why it even started hurting at running in the first place so you can continue to do that. Exactly.
Absolutely. So starting to expand that view, expand your tolerance level so that you can handle more, so that your body doesn't react, but you actually learn how to respond.
Yeah.
And I think part of what happens when we're in super high stress mode, this is kind of, again, like the last thing that I want to share before we talk about actually breathing, is that it can, if you're in that place and you're trying to do things like, okay, I need to limit my screen time, I need to exercise more, I need to sleep better, I need to change my diet. If like that's your response, chances are, because your window is like this, you can't necessarily handle that.
And then you almost feel like you're even making it smaller because you're like, I should do this, I should do this. Literally, this is what I do all the time. I'm always like, oh, I should not drink any alcohol. I should exercise every day. I should not have any sugar. And then eventually you just go, F it.
Forget it.
And do it all. Because you're like, you're well, I call it you're shitting on yourself, and then you just finally rebel, you know? But you're making your world smaller and smaller.
You're making your world smaller and smaller. Yeah. So, and it can be frustrating to hear that that's what you need to do in those moments, I think. So I want to give people permission to like take small steps that maybe seem even seemingly unrelated on a larger level, because you're not going to logic your way out of stress. It's a primal response.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
You're not gonna spreadsheet your way out of stress.
Which, I mean, so I have a very logical brain, and I have worked years trying to retrain that, and I'm still working on it literally every day. And my therapist, so I deal with a lot of anxiety. That is a big stressor for me. My therapist is always like, one, you got to push through it, but it's not logical. None of this process is logical. It's all, which is hard for us logical brains. Yeah.
I think Jill Bolte Taylor says we are feeling beings living in a thinking system, basically, something of that nature. But first, we are feeling beings. Like that.
And we're always pushing down our feelings. Always.
So you're not going to logic your way out of it. And if you wait until those moments where you're feeling it the most intensely to try and do something for it, if that's the only time that you try and address it is when you're really, really feeling it, again, that action is probably going to make your window of tolerance smaller. Right. Because it's stressful in that moment to try and add anything that's unknown or that isn't an experienced thing for you. Yeah. So the biggest thing I would say that you can do, the third thing after you understand all of that, is it's what you do outside the moments that you are feeling this most intensely that actually set you up to be able to deal with those moments where things feel really out of your control.
Yes. Preventative. I try to talk to people about that all the time with pain. You know, if you're waiting till you're in a flare-up, it's a whole lot harder to get out of the flare up and to, get out of pain if
Mhm.
you've missed the signals ahead of time,
Mhm.
right? Versus if you're,
Yeah.
you have a little ache, let's get it
Yeah.
let's get it solved now
Yeah.
versus waiting till it gets a full blown like arthritic whatever
Yeah.
to then do something about it. Unfortunately, we
Mhm.
are very reactionary, so we normally push it off, push it off, push it off
Right.
until
Yeah.
our body screams at us
Yeah.
in stress and pain, right? It goes, I mean, they're so tied together.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I think the biggest thing I would tell people after understand all of that and then know that it's about the foundation that you're building outside of those times. Because with stress and pain, the reality is, especially chronic pain, you're feeling it all the time.
Right.
It's always happening. There are just some times where it's more intense and you kind of get numb to the less intense times.
Yeah.
So you kind of get in this state of mind where you're like, oh, it's not bothering me right now. I don't need to deal with it. And then it flares up and you go, oh crap. Like,
I'll deal with it now.
What do I do now? And then it goes back down. Yeah. So if you can start focusing on those times on either side of that, to start incorporating something as simple as breathing, which breath is probably one of the most powerful things you can do for stress and pain. And I mean, it's hugely powerful.
Yeah.
So
have you read the book, Breathe? I think it's by James Nestor.
Nestor.
Oh,
Yeah.
good book.
So
Such a good book. I recommend that to a lot of people because I didn't even realize how connected just working on your breathing can solve or help, at least help, a lot of chronic pain issues. Just doing breath work, which is very, very interesting. Highly recommend that book, guys. If you've never heard of it, Breathe or Breath. Is it Breathe or
by
Breath?
James Nestor.
Yeah, by James Nestor. Very, very interesting. Goes into a lot of science behind it too.
Yeah, but very digestible and readable.
Oh yeah, it's super readable. And it's nice because the audiobook, at the end of the audiobook, it does the exercises that it puts that it talks about, and you can hear it because I'm a very visual person, but auditory in that sense of like if you're doing a breathwork technique, you want to like kind of hear it. It's very helpful. Anyways, continue.
So that's what I have. Like that was sort of what I had to lead up to like, okay, this is why I feel like breathing is such a great tool. It's so available. You can do it anytime. It can be very simple. It doesn't have to be complicated. And that's the other thing. Like if you're seeking out breathing techniques and coaching around that and it's super complex, it does not need to.
Yeah. I think it all has its time and place, like we talked about.
Oh yeah.
But if you're just starting out and you're literally just looking for, well, one, if you're even just really learning how to breathe again, because a lot of people are like, oh, I breathe, right? Because like, how
of
else
course you do. You're alive.
When you breathe, but you've potentially lost the primal aspect of breathing, the natural aspect of breathing, and your body has adapted, right, to get air as it can, but you're not doing it optimally, or you're not doing it as the way your body was meant to breathe. And just getting those breathing muscles working again and opening up areas of your body or deeper part of your lungs that you're probably not getting into, especially if you're collapsed forward, can make a huge difference in a lot of things. I think a lot of people in this group particularly struggle with neck pain, shoulder pain, tension headaches, a lot of tension headaches, and breathing is a big like component to that. You're probably not getting enough air, and your body's reacting in certain ways to try to tell you that. And we haven't, got to put on our little detective caps and figure out what it's trying to tell you.
Yeah. Well, and that's what I was going to say. You, I'm sure, see tons of this in your work with posture because and this is where it all starts to come together, right?
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
so when you're stressed, you start to use all these muscles up here to breathe. Like that's a response. You don't have any control over that, by the way. That just starts happening. Like you said, it's your body trying to get air in quickly to mobilize you so you can get away from danger, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if your stress or danger is that the job you go to every day sucks and you don't want to be there, that your body doesn't know that that's not life threatening.
Yeah.
So that
Or
just
a
stays,
lion chasing you. It doesn't
yeah,
know the difference.
no. So that just stays on all the time, and these muscles get so tight and so tense. And then
Yep.
they start to turn off the diaphragm, which you might want to talk about a little bit right now. I don't know. Um,
You can.
which is
I
a
can.
primary breathing muscle.
Exactly. You know, I think I wrote this actually into my program. I talk about breathing within the program, and we do work a little bit on just natural breathing. We don't go
Mm-hmm.
into a whole lot of breathing techniques, but just to open up the breathing muscles and to kind of loosen that up. You know, if you're rounded forward in like a kyphotic position with your shoulders up here and you can't access your diaphragm, you're literally doing like, I can't remember how many breaths you take a day. It's a lot. You're literally doing that amount of shoulder shrugs a day. No wonder this is all tight and locked up and freaked out, because you're like literally breathing from your shoulders and doing shoulder shrugs. And then you're like, oh, well, I can't get to any of this part. And I'm like, yeah, because this is all so incredibly tight.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, the diaphragm is a muscle that's at the bottom of your rib cage, right?
Yep.
That when you breathe in, it should go down. Actually, when it contracts, it should go down. So when you're breathing, your actual organs are kind of coming out, and that's why when you're breathing correctly, your stomach actually is supposed to come out, versus a lot of people breathe with their rib cage, their chest, and their stomach comes in. It's very opposite of what is actually supposed to happen. But like you said, you know, if you are so, I keep coming back, if you're so like rounded and locked up, you can't even access that optimally, right, without changing the position of your mid-back, your shoulders. And I always like to tie it in, changing position of your mid-back and shoulders requires changing position of your hip and pelvic position as well. They all always work hand in hand. You cannot change your shoulder position without looking at your pelvic position and your lower body position.
Nope.
Yeah.
Forgive us as we geek out here, folks.
But yeah. Go ahead with
No, that's, I mean, I just
the diaphragm.
So that's what, when I say like, if you're seeking out breathing exercises and they're complicated and they're focusing a lot on timing, which is a cool thing, and it absolutely helps with stress to time your breath and to breathe in a certain way. But if you're not even in a place where you're connecting with your diaphragm yet, none of that is going to be very helpful.
Yeah. That's an advancement technique, right? I think I actually, again, built that into my program. It was a while when I made the video, but where you just focus on letting your diaphragm do the movement. And then after you do that, you can then focus on expanding. Some people call it rib cage breathing, expanding the lower rib cage. Honestly, when I start people off, even that, trying to expand the lower rib cage and the back is too advanced, right? Just like literally focusing on letting your stomach stick out, because everybody is so focused on holding the stomach in, and then you can't breathe, right? Just letting your stomach do some movements, which is making your diaphragm do movement. You know, a lot of people don't have control over, okay, my diaphragm is going to go down while I breathe in.
No.
You know, just letting your stomach go will help access that a little bit better. And then once you conquer that, then you can go into letting your lower rib cage expand, focusing on like timing and breath control and stuff like that. But before that, literally You just have to
Yeah.
let the stomach go and let the
Yeah.
diaphragm get back to its natural
Yeah.
movements.
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
love that you said that, because I think that's where I start with people. Because
Mhm.
I'll watch somebody, I'll say, okay, take a deep breath, and I'll just kind of watch what happens to see
Right.
where they're breathing. And a lot of times what happens is the inhale is really short and sharp, and their chest just goes,
Yep. Yeah.
right?
Exactly.
And I'm like, okay. And I'll say, okay, try and breathe down into your belly, which, by the way, doesn't make a lot of sense.
No.
So I think it's important to recognize you're not actually sending air into your belly. Like, it's not
No.
going down there. Like you said, what's happening is the diaphragm, which just goes straight across the middle of your body, front to back, all around, right? Right at the bottom of the rib cage. It's just moving down because the lungs are filling up and taking up more space. And it's moving down, and it's just pushing everything down. That's
Yep.
why your belly moves,
Yep.
right? So I think if you can understand that as you inhale and the lungs just naturally expand, the diaphragm is going to do what it's going to do. You don't have to make it happen. You can just
have to get out of the way.
You just have to get out of the way.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's important to recognize sometimes people are so locked up in their, thoracic back position.
Yeah.
It's super hard to just get out of its way. That's where you have to change the position and open up the body to even get into a position to get out of the diaphragm.
Yeah. So it's all, I feel like I have to sneeze.
Oh,
okay, it went away. No, it went away. Exactly. And that's where it's all, you don't necessarily want to just look at one piece of the puzzle. You don't necessarily just want to focus on relaxation, and you don't necessarily just want to focus on posture and strength
That's
training.
why I had you on here today.
They all go together.
They all work together. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So I know it's 11. How are you doing on time? Do you have to run?
I'm okay.
I'm okay. I have a client at 12. I thought it was at 11, but it's at 12, so we're good. Now, I know you want to talk a little bit about the vagus nerve. Which I think is really interesting, because I actually don't talk about the vagus nerve like ever. And so I'm really curious to hear what you say about that. Did you want to do the breathing first, or did you want to talk about the vagus nerve?
Let's just talk about the vagus nerve real quick, and then that way we can end with the breathing and turn our brains off and just.
I love it. I love it.
Okay. Yeah. So, you may have heard of the vagus nerve. Even anyone who's watching or this now or later.
My boyfriend calls it the gambling nerve, or the Las Vegas nerve.
Vegas nerve.
Which I find really funny. It's not spelled that way.
But I love it.
Yeah, exactly. Because there's a little ear trick that stimulates the vagus nerve or something. It's like, side note, you like pull down on your ear and pull out. And recently I've been having a lot of issues with this ear. It's been really weird. And so I've been doing this like vagus nerve stimulation technique. And so he's like, oh, are you activating your gambling nerve? Oh my God. So I don't know. It's just little things,
I like it. I like it. So it's kind of a buzz word right now. And I mean, it has been for a little while. Yeah. And I don't feel like you have to understand anything in depth necessarily, other than to know that your vagus nerve is kind of like the highway for all the information that gets sent from your internal organs, like to the brain. So like your digestion is linked to the vagus nerve, your breathing, your heart rate.
Side note, we're talking about digestion next week. So perfect.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah. So it's just this bundle of nerves that goes down the center of the body. And here's what's interesting about it, other than the fact that it's like connected to all these very crucial functions for health, like digestion and such, is that it actually runs directly through the diaphragm. Ooh. So it has two ways that it connects with the diaphragm. The first is just location, like it literally is in contact with the diaphragm. And then the second is that it actually communicates with the diaphragm and has some impact there on how the diaphragm works via messages from the brain, right? Yeah. So there are there's tons of science around this that says that slow, deep breathing directly impacts the vagus nerve, which has a direct impact on your nervous system, which affects how you deal with stress. So, if I could simplify it, that's what I would say. And that slow, deep breathing affects this really powerful nerve that is going to help you reduce your stress response and help you get out of that fight or flight mode.
Yeah. Yeah, I love simplifying things. We don't need to like go into the science or reports. If you guys want to do that, more power to you. But it's like, that's what you need to know, right?
Yeah,
that's what
you need to know.
If you want to go into the science, you're probably more of a practitioner, right?
Right.
But the people in this group probably it's nice to know that there's a lot of science behind it. There's studies out there that if you want to look it up, feel free. But basically, that's what you need to know. Yeah.
So that's why that's another reason I like to start with belly breathing with people. It's like, let's just get your diaphragm working. Let's get that vagus nerve stimulated a little bit.
Exactly.
Get that upper body to relax.
Yeah. One of my favorite ways, and I do this in the program that I have, is laying on your back. So that way you can open up your shoulder position. You can change your thoracic back position. Now, if you're so rounded, I call it turtle shelling, where you're so rounded, that's another thing. We could talk about that differently. You don't want to throw yourself on your back that way, but changing that shoulder position, laying on your back, getting that to kind of relax, then you can access your diaphragm and your all that soft tissue in the front a lot easier.
Yeah.
And next week with digestion, I'm also going to I'm going to show that in the group. It's called static back in my my repertoire. That's what we call the exercise, static back. Super easy. It's actually in my 3 exercises to help posture handout that I have, but it really helps with digestion as well. And you're connecting it back into, you change the position. The vagus nerve, is more open. It's not like completely compromised with your rounded forward position, and then everything flows easier, including digestion as well as breath, and all connected. We need an all connected counter, right?
We do.
If I had an editor, I would have them go in and just count how many times we say it's all connected. But I don't, so it's fine.
So do you want to jump into a breathing exercise?
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah.
I'm excited. Okay. Yeah. So what do we need to do? Are we on the floor? Are we?
You can do it in any position you want. However, when you said I have people lay down, that is my preferred way to do this, because I'm not going to lay down. I'm just going to walk you through it.
I'll lay down.
But that is my preferred way, is to have people lay down.
Okay.
And on your back, I like to lay. Yeah.
Just lay down like how? Like here?
Correct, with your knees bent and your feet flat. That's my preferred way, because I feel like that takes the pressure out of the low back. If you're someone who has low back issues or challenges, it's probably going to be a little more comfortable to have your knees bent.
Yep.
And then if you need something under your head or neck, a pillow, a little blanket, whatever, you can also grab that if you're feeling like you need support under the head or neck. And you're going to start just by closing your eyes and connecting with your breath. You're not going to worry about making it deep, expansive. All you're going to do is bring your focus to the movement of your breath as it enters and leaves your body. Just getting a little focused, a little grounded, a little present right now as you lay on the floor. And for the next few cycles of just natural breathing, I want you to bring your attention to the backside of your body. So really notice the entire backside of your body in contact with the surface beneath you. Back of head, shoulders and arms, spine and hips, all the way down to the bottoms of the feet. So just really feeling that support that's coming up from underneath you as you lay on the floor. And then there are two different things that we're gonna practice here today. And when I say practice, I mean that. It's not about perfection. It's not about doing anything right or wrong. It's simply about trying it out and seeing what happens. If you can, I'd like you to breathe in through your nose right now and out through your mouth. I do understand that nasal breathing isn't always available to everyone for a lot of different reasons. So if breathing in through your nose is not an option, it's okay to breathe in and out through your mouth. But if you can, I'd like you to breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth. A couple more cycles of breath in that way. And hopefully you're starting to feel a little more relaxed. Things are slowing down a little bit. So if that's the case, I want to invite you to just lengthen your inhale and your exhale just a fraction of an amount, just a little bit slower, a little bit longer on the inhale and the exhale. And then as you continue to breathe in this slightly deeper, slightly longer cycle of breath in and out, I want you to bring your attention to your belly. And see if you can connect with any movement that's happening in your belly as you inhale and exhale. What you might notice as you inhale, that your belly rises, even if it's just a little bit. There's a small movement of the belly up towards the ceiling, and then as you exhale, the belly releases and falls back down to neutral. You may even feel your low back release a little bit on that exhale. So just breathing at your own pace now, just following that movement in the belly, bringing your attention there. If you're finding it challenging to connect with that sensation in the abdomen, shift your focus right now instead to the upper body. Take a breath in here, and as you exhale, notice how the upper body releases down towards the floor. There's a softness that happens at the back of the head and neck, and the arms become heavy. One more breath in that way. Releasing the upper body, allowing it to just spread and become nice and heavy onto the floor. Continue to breathe in this way, noticing how as you exhale, you're able to keep that softness in the upper body, even as you go to enter into your next inhale. You can hold on to that sensation, that softness in the upper body as you go into your next breath. And from this place, a nice soft body, a nice relaxed spine, knowing that you can hold on to this, that you can sustain that relaxed feeling, bring your attention back to your belly and notice the rise and fall of your belly as you breathe. And let's just layer one more piece here. Continue with all of this. So nice, relaxed upper body, head, neck, and shoulders are soft. You're following that gentle movement in the belly as you breathe. On your next inhale, I want you to breathe in through your nose. And then as you exhale, I want you to let the air out through your mouth like you're fogging up a mirror. I want you to repeat this a few more times at your own pace, relaxing the jaw, fogging the mirror as you exhale. more as you're ready. And then just bring your attention to your entire body now. If you'd like to draw the knees up to the chest and give yourself a little hug to come out of this, you can do that. Just gently drawing the knees to the chest. Maybe you want to rock back and forth a little bit, just making your way out of this breathing exercise in a gentle way. When you're ready, you can roll to your side and come to a seated position. And I'll have you stay in that seated position just for a breath. Close your eyes, just kind of feel your body, especially your upper body, noticing if you feel a little more space on either side of the neck, a little more ease in the upper body. And that is what I would suggest if you're feeling stressed out.
Love it. I love it. Nice. And people can always come back and do that with you here, you know. I seriously, like, we're so similar because this is the kind of the stuff that I lead. That's as normally as far as I take it. But the only thing that I do slightly differently is I'll put the legs bent at 90 degrees.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
But it's really nice because then the you don't have to hold any tension in your legs.
I love that.
You can like fully relax.
I love that bolster.
Yeah. It's
I have
really
bolster envy.
Sorry, what?
I have bolster envy.
Well, I can send you the link if you want to get it. It's like $100, unfortunately. It's not a cheap bolster, but I'll send you it. But you can just use a couch or a chair. It's the same height as a chair, and that's what I do. And I love.
Oh yeah, Jennifer said I use a chair. I do too.
Yeah. When you're on your back like that, just posturally for anybody watching, that's a great way to help reduce any rotation too. So if you ever notice that your shoulder is rotated forward or your hip specifically is rotated forward, especially doing it with the legs at 90 degrees, it's a great way to reduce rotation and let it fall into the floor because you're using the floor as a plumb surface. And then when you add the breathing on top of it, you're actually letting your body respond to those changes versus if you're just trying to hold it and you're like, just relax, you know, it doesn't work. You're your body will stay in that twisted position. So, that's something I use.
I love that.
Almost with every new client, my program starts in that position because it helps reduce rotation as well as then you add the breathing and now it helps reduce the stress. So again, it's all connected. Counter. But so you're getting 2 for 1, right? You're working on your rotation, you're working on your shoulder position, as well as now working on the breathing and working on getting air to your head. This is a great thing for people to do in their for tension. 100%.
Yeah. And I do think the first step in the whole breathing journey, like if that's what you're going to focus on for stress, which is a great thing to focus on, is this part where you're getting acquainted with your body and how your breath is actually happening in your body and what you're doing right now and learning how to stay relaxed here and let the belly move. Like that's step 1. And just because it's not complicated doesn't mean it's not effective. I actually think that this is probably 100%. More effective sometimes than like counting your breath and do it, you know.
Yeah. Or doing like crazy, you know, like exercises, you know, doing bird dog to start off versus literally laying on your back and focusing on your breathing can give you a lot more benefits. You know, it depends on the person, obviously, and where you are in your journey. But this is just because it feels easy, maybe it doesn't even feel easy, and that's okay. Doesn't mean it's any less effective than
I think
getting
it's just
your
sweat
on.
Efforting. I think it's just because you're not efforting.
I like that.
Doesn't mean you're not doing something's not happening.
Exactly. I love that. Just because you're not efforting. I love that. That's amazing. Yes,
Yeah.
I completely agree.
Yeah.
So similar. I love it.
That's
Well,
right.
thank you so much for coming.
Yeah.
How can people follow you and find you in the future?
Yeah, so I will drop, if it's okay with you, I'll just maybe drop some links in the comments.
Yeah.
I actually do have a restorative yoga class coming up
Love it.
next Saturday that I would love to share with anybody
Yeah.
who wants
Yeah.
to join. It's an online event. It's basically like yoga nap time in your home. It's awesome.
Love it. Love it.
And oh, good. Josh said this was super helpful. That's awesome.
Nice. Oh, I didn't even see comments.
I don't know
Probably
why they're
because
showing up
your
on my
video,
screen,
mine.
but
Yeah.
so I'll drop some links. I'll drop a link for that event if that's okay. And then maybe I'll just drop a link for my group if anyone wants more info. I'm all about gentle, kind, relaxing practices.
Love it.
Which doesn't always mean easy.
Right. Just because you're not efforting doesn't mean it's not effective.
Doesn't mean it's not effective.
Exactly. And I think there's all sorts of types of people in this group. I do a little bit more efforting.
There's nothing wrong with
Maybe.
It just
Sometimes I feel like
every.
It's cool because even though we do very, very, very similar things,
Yeah.
we come about it slightly different approaches, and that's why I wanted to have you on. Josh says sometimes stillness takes more effort than anything. Yeah, 100%.
I have people almost I can feel the frustration with me sometimes in yoga classes where I'm like, just lay and breathe, and they're like, what are we doing? Why? Like, Jen, what are we doing next?
Yeah, what are we doing? Let's go. Jen said, yeah, you do, in response to my, sometimes it's a little bit more effort. It depends. If I start off a client at the very beginning, we're doing stuff like this, but then Jen was a one-on-one client of mine for a while, and I'll beat them up sometimes, but in a way that they can handle and they can not get overwhelmed. But I'm a big advocate of we don't believe in no pain, no gain. That is not a thing. But I'm a big person of if you're not putting some effort in, there's the relaxation technique, but you gotta work. No work, no gain is what I say. No work, no gain. But not no pain, no gain. Don't believe that.
Well, and that is definitely where the crossover between you and I happens, because there's nothing wrong with fitness. There's nothing wrong with working. There's nothing wrong with efforting. It just should not be attached to everything you do in your life.
Yeah, exactly. Josh said there's a good type of pain and a bad type of pain. I always like to say, I think of pain as, pain, and pain is a warning signal, right? And if your body is giving you that warning signal, we need to stop because there's a reason it's giving you that warning signal. But different feelings of cramping or burning or, effort, shaking.
Yeah.
If people think of that as pain, then that might be okay. I specify.
I feel like we could have a whole nother.
Yeah, I know, we could. But that's where the no work, no gain comes in, right? If you're not, the cramping and shaking and burning, that's okay. But if it's pain, then that's what we want to avoid. And that's why I just like to specify that good pain versus bad pain depends on your definition of pain. Same thing I could go off on depends on your definition of the core. But I won't.
Right.
I already have a video about that.
Well, it all comes down to mindset. That's to me, the thing about that is it all really comes down to what is your mindset.
Exactly. If you're going to push through anything, then that's an issue, right? We can't push through. You can work, but you can't push, and you can't ignore the signals. And I think that's where a lot of people end up, just
injured.
I'm gonna ignore what my body's telling me. I'm just gonna keep going because I need to get better. I'm going off on tangents, but one more thing. It's very interesting because I'll see this sometimes I'll have a client and then they'll end up, like I've had a client fall off of a bike once and twist something. Actually, I've had 2 clients fall off bikes. You guys need to stop falling off bikes, just like fluke accidents, you know? But they'll come
I'm not
back.
laughing at you, by the way, if you were one of those people. I just
No. No, it's just unfortunate. I think
Yeah.
there's a lot of bikers around here too, but
Yeah.
you know, I've fallen off a bike before. I fell yesterday on climbing some rocks. So
I've fallen stepping off of a curb, so I am not the right person to.
Fluke accidents, but it's very interesting to see the mindset afterwards, because now they have this acute injury and they'll come back to the therapy process and they'll push. They'll be like, no, I want to get better faster. I'm not gonna like isolate or do, you know, I'm not going to focus as much. I'm going to push harder and I want to like get better faster. But then honestly, most of the time pushing harder sets you back further. Right? Very interesting. It's all about that mindset. And I think keeping that mindset talk open when you are doing any sort of therapeutic process, whether it's stress relief, whether it's mental health therapy, and it's physical movement therapy, it all comes from the mind. I say to clients all the time, it's 90% mind, 10% exercises and movement. Falling off bikes for me is more like sleeping on my shoulder wrong.
Yeah.
Well, there could be things that, you know, you can do with that.
I am officially at that age now where I get out of bed and something mysteriously happened overnight and I'm injured.
Wow. Maybe I'll send you some exercises to do when you get up.
Please do.
And that's I think in a couple weeks. So for those watching, next week is going to be digestion week. I'm going to have Marissa Hughes on, which is cool because Breanna also knows her, and she's
amazing.
She was a client of hers, and she's going to talk about the nutrition aspect of digestion. I'm going to talk all the week about the postural aspect of digestion, and then she's going to come in and do more of the nutrition stuff, but she's also Pilates certified, so she also ties in some of that movement stuff, which I'm really excited to have her. And then the week after that, I'm going to talk about a lot of desk sitting. Sitting is the new smoking, so stay tuned for that. And then I haven't decided next month, but I definitely think there's going to be a sleep week in there.
Nice.
For, you know, everybody's always asking me like position of sleeping, and your story is not uncommon with I slept a little wrong. Now I hurt in the morning, and my thing is we can always do things in the morning to reset the body after stuff like that happens. So I think
I will be tuning in for those things.
Yeah. I haven't found a sleep person yet because I haven't decided whether when sleep week is going to be, but I'm sure I'll try to find another practitioner to kind of give us some tips on that side of things, not the postural side, but the what they can do to help sleep. I don't know. Let's figure it out. I'm not a sleep practitioner, but
there's someone out there.
Some thoughts posturally about sleep. Anyways, all right. Well, it was so lovely having you on.
Thank you. I really enjoyed this.
Comments so people can go follow you and do your class and everything. And well, I'll talk to you later. But thanks again. And thanks everybody for tuning in.